often referred to as the anticipatory grief when someone you love is diagnosed with a dementia. And again, that's a very different experience, for everybody. But it's thinking about, that it's psychologically very challenging because it feels a bit like a grief process, but the person is still alive. So it's more of a grief of what could have been or what's going to be different about your life. So you're still living with that person physically, or they're still there with you physically, but your relationship's changed. So it's a grief about a change in relationship, and also thinking about a shared future, because the shared future that you may have planned may be different. So you have to kind of adjust to that. In the same way that you adjust to someone not being alive anymore, you have to adjust to that change in the relationship. So if we think about what plans that we'd have, and we all have plans about what we're going to do whenever we retire, and we're going to have this great life and we're going to travel. Whenever your partner, for example, is diagnosed with dementia, you may need to adjust those plans slightly. Now, that's not to say that you won't be able to travel, but you might be traveling in a slightly different way, or you might be traveling to slightly different places. So there's a bit of a grief for those lost plans that you may have had, that you have to do things slightly differently. And that's not to say that it won't be as good as or even better, but it's just going to be different, and we have to adjust to that difference. And that in itself is a loss. And also, I think there's the change in the relationship, because as the dementia progresses, your relationship changes from a partner to potentially having a caring role. And that in itself then can cause some challenges for you in thinking, well, I wasn't expecting to be a carer. I was expecting to have this relationship that we always had. And also, I think things like shared responsibility. So we tend to have these traditional roles within the family where maybe I do the cooking and you do the DIY, I do the shopping and you do the washing up, or you pay the bills, or whatever it is. And we have these roles that we've developed over a number of years. And then as the person's abilities change, they may not be able to do some of those roles. So I may now start to be doing the washing up that I didn't like to do, or, I might be paying the bills that I wasn't responsible to before. So these are all tiny losses. Whenever a person with dementia, as they progress, we're constantly having to make these adjustments to the way that we interact and to our relationship. And sometimes we're not aware of it because they're small. And sometimes we don't acknowledge that we're having these losses. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that those losses are there, and give ourselves time to adjust, because we can feel a wee bit, we can be cross about it. I didn't sign up for this. This is not what I expected. And I think it's okay to be cross, because things have changed. And when we allow ourselves to have all of those range of feelings that we have, we can adjust, I think, a wee bit more easily.
Yeah. And I guess for the person with dementia, they can feel cross too, because it's
Absolutely.
their plans and their hopes and their frustrations and the way they might be viewed by their partner, and they may not understand why they're being overly fussy or solicitous. Get off, get off. What do you mean? What do you, so you can see it from both perspectives, can't we? The loss in both sides. Just as we're in the grieving, we're remembering stories of the person who's died. I think with somebody with dementia, it's like if we remember them, and we're holding memories of them and scaffolding them and holding them in mind, we can feed back that to them. And for me, it's about identity and loss of identity. So, how we reflect back the person to themselves as well in their identity is really important. So what we enable them to see themselves at their best. If we look at ourselves through the eyes of people who've loved us, how do we feel about ourselves? And I think if we need to be the loving eyes often for people to reflect back their best bits. And sometimes it can be in dementia, it can be a negative. Oh, they can't do this, they can't do that. Well, actually, no, they can do this, they can do that, and they're this instead,
That sometimes when someone's diagnosed with dementia, there'll be a change in the social network, because sometimes friends and family stop to visit. So there's that loss of social connection. And it's because part of it is because the friends and family don't know what to say, and they don't know how to help with that as well. Some people, as you quite rightly say, Polly, don't maybe want to join groups, or and they'd rather maybe just deal with it sort of on their own. And that's where education is really important. So resources that provide information. So one of the things I think that causes some challenges for, between carers and maybe the person with dementia is that independence and, supporting someone to be as independent as possible. So let's say someone's ability change and they were quite independent with maybe, making a cup of tea and some lunch. And it may be as the dementia develops, they could still do most of that, but they might need a little bit of support. So if the carer goes in and does too much, then that's going to cause an awful lot of frustration for the person and cause a lot of tension. And sometimes by over helping somebody, we can really damage their self-esteem because the person wants to do as much as possible. So it's recognizing, it's really important for the carers to recognize that the person with dementia is experiencing the losses as well. And when someone resists our support, it's not because they're being difficult, it's because they want to be able to do it themselves. So I think that balance between managing the losses of the carer and managing the losses of the person with dementia is really, really important.